Hey everybody, I'm Justin Gary, author of Think Like a Game Designer. Now, I wrote this book in an effort to help other people learn from my 20 years of experience in the gaming industry. I've actually been a game designer, a professional game player, Magic the Gathering national champion. I run my own game companies. I do consulting work for companies all around the world. And a lot of times when I encounter people that both play my games or that really love games, they always ask me the same questions. How could I do that? How can I make a living in the game industry? And I wrote Think Like a Game Designer to answer that question. If you want to learn how a creative mind works, if you want to be able to design your own games from the very beginning and follow step by step instructions that take you to a finished product, or if you want to get a job in the industry, make connections, and help make your dreams a reality, hopefully this book has something for you. Now, I have asked everybody for some questions that you want answered, and I'm going to actually answer them here. I got your top 10 questions so that I can actually answer your questions directly and help very specifically with the kind of stuff you guys want to know. So we'll get started. Question number one: how is it working with Richard Garfield on SoulForge? Do you think SoulForge, when it was announced back in 2012, was too far ahead of its time? If you were to launch it today, what would have been different? That's a great question. For those of you that don't know, SoulForge is a digital collectible card game that I co-designed with Richard Garfield, and it was really one of the first games that was a true digital collectible card game designed for digital alone. The cards themselves would actually transform as they leveled up, and it was a really fun, really innovative game. Working with Richard on that project was honestly a dream come true for me. Richard Garfield is the creator of Magic the Gathering as well as countless other games, and he's always been an inspiration to me. In fact, I wouldn't have anything near the life that I have today if not for Richard. He really made all of this possible. So I've been eternally grateful to him, and being able to work with him. When I found out, actually, the reason I started working with him is we were both speaking at a PAX Dev conference, and he was giving a talk, and somebody asked what his favorite game was at the moment, and he actually said my game Ascension. At which point, in the back of the crowd, I kind of do a little woohoo, and he heard me, and we all laughed. But we started talking, and then we ended up collaborating together and building SoulForge. So I'm really proud of the product. It didn't do as well as we had hoped, and that's why this question of, was it ahead of its time? It's hard to say. I think the game was really strong, and it still is, and I really do hope to bring it back in some form someday. I think technologically, we were a little bit underprepared for what we needed to be to get that executed the way it should have been. And then, of course, Hearthstone came out around the same time, and also is a great game with a much bigger budget. And so, if I were to launch SoulForge today, I would definitely have a bigger budget planned. I have a team of people that are far more experienced now, and I think we'd be able to execute it far better. And I have some ideas for how this might actually get to come back. So I'm not going to spoil everything, but SoulForge fans out there, definitely stay tuned, and there'll be more posts on that. And I'll use this as a chance to plug. If you go to stoneblade.com, you can sign up for our email list where I post not only game design tips, but also news about our upcoming games and stuff that you might like to hear, like about SoulForge. All right, question number two. In your book, you mentioned that one way to enter the tabletop industry is by just showing up, being at a show, volunteering at booths, meeting people, etc. You mentioned that when people know you personally, it's easier to enter the industry. Do you have any advice for people who live in other parts of the world that want to be a part of the industry but can't easily go to shows or volunteer? This is also a great question. When I say it's important to show up, yes, absolutely. Conventions and being with people in person is definitely the best way. And if you can, go to gaming conventions, surround yourself with the people in the industry and the people who you want to be working with if you want to have a better chance of becoming friends with them, of seeing opportunities when they arise and getting a job in the industry. But even if you can't show up in person, we live in an interconnected world, right? I'm talking to you from across the planet right now, and there's plenty of ways for you to be able to connect with people online. And be that in forums and groups like Board Game Geek, on Reddit threads, go to company specific forum pages and speak and reach out to them directly. There's plenty of ways to make yourself known and to create a public persona and add value to the world, right? That's what we're talking about here. If you want to get a job in any industry, your job, your goal should be to add as much value and build relationships through that process. So, create some content, some fan content and post it online, or enter some game design competitions, or write reviews or post video reviews. Build communities and add value to them. Show what you can do. If you can draw and post your stuff on different sites like DeviantArt. Submit your stuff via email or online forums to different people that can help you. So there are plenty of ways, and even build communities within your own area, right? If you're in a foreign country, do you have your own conventions that you can have? And maybe you can get different game companies to want to come to you or send you product and build relationships that way, help promote their products, and they're going to have be much more inclined to come and work with you. Okay, question number 3. With the wide success of your game Ascension, many sets since it gave the whole world a whole new flavor of deck building. How did you plan out the progression of the mechanics of each set? Do you have ideas at the start you cut out to put in later expansions? What is your process in developing expansions? So, this is a question I talk about extensively in the book. I have a whole chapter called How to Make Games That Last that speaks about very specifically how do you think about developing something that you want to last for years and you want to keep creating new content on it. So I won't go too deep into this question right now, but a couple of tips are you want to make sure that yes, you do cut things out. You want to keep things simple up front and have some plans ahead of time. I actually had 3 years of planning done before I launched Ascension. Now we're currently working on year 8 and year 9 worth of content, so those plans had to be extended, but thinking about that ahead of time is really valuable. And also really being clear on what the defined core is of your game, right? The core of Ascension is that experience of improving your deck and being forced to deal with the limited subset of cards and options that are available to you that are also being fought over by your opponents. That's like really the heart of the game. And you'll note that every set I do has a mechanic that changes the flavor of that experience and interacts with it in a way that makes you think about things differently. So that's just kind of a top line answer, but again, you can dig a lot more of that in the book. Question number 4. How do you view the current consolidation of the industry into the big game companies like Asmodee and to a certain extent Ultra Pro, WizKids, and WotC, etc.? Does this make it harder for designers starting out? I don't think so. I think that the fact that the industry is consolidating is not surprising at all, right? This happens in every single industry, right? Tabletop gaming has been in a boon for the last 20 years, has been growing and growing and growing pretty consistently. And of course, you had an explosion of tons of different companies, and then you had a consolidation, which is going to happen. And I think a lot of what happens with those big companies is actually they're able to make things more efficient, right? They're able to promote games better, and they're able to have more presence at shows, demo games better, have better relationships with customers and stores. And so as a designer, right, you can work with these companies. You don't have to design things on your own. And so actually being able to approach, like we at Stoneblade partnered with Ultra Pro to help publish and promote our games. And it's actually been a huge partnership because what it's allowed me to do is offload some of that work to them, let them do what they do best, and have use their relationships to help get to more stores, while I can focus on designing great games and communicating to people like you and our fans. And that's the stuff that I can do best. So it actually is a value add. Now, I will say there's something related that is a challenge, which is that not that there's a consolidation in the game industry, but that there are so many games out there now, right? Every month it seems like hundreds of new games get released. And so being as a new designer to get heard in that noise of so many different games is a big challenge. And I give advice on that in the book as well. But the basics of what you want to separate yourself out is a lot about what I talked about earlier, right? Make relationships in this industry, build a tribe, build a community, write a blog, get people to follow you, get people to pay attention to you, get people to care about what you're doing. Because even if you have a great game, if nobody knows who you are, if you don't have any connections, if you don't have any way to get it out, it's going to be very hard to get people to play it. So being great and building a great game is of course important. Building great relationships and building your tribe are both very important in being able to get out there and overcome that noise. Number 5. Given your history as a game designer, from MTG Pro player to being part of a game design team to starting your own company, what was the most rewarding part of that journey? That is a tough question. I really have been so blessed in so many different phases. And, they've all had their challenges too. But I mean, for me, like that part of being a pro player when I was in high school, winning the U.S. National Championships, being able to travel around the world and meet friends from all over and learn a lot along the way, was huge in forming the person who I am now. Working on a design team and being able to work with huge brands like Marvel and DC and World of Warcraft was awesome, right? These are things I grew up with, and then I was able to work on them. And then, of course, starting my own company has been incredibly rewarding, and being able to actually like build what I want and really look at the company and building a company and like I would designing a game, right? I want to make sure that everybody in my company is having a great time and has a great life, and that it works, and that the whole thing, the system is balanced, and the economy works out. So it's really hard to say, and I don't mean to dodge the question, but each part has been like a necessary part in the journey, and so it's hard for me to imagine any one of them without any others, and so they really are all linked in my mind. So I think it's really one piece for me, even though they seem very different. Number 6. Of all your games designs, which is your personal favorite? That's a tough one also. It's like asking me to choose between my children. Right now, it's really a toss-up. I mean, Ascension is always going to have a place in my heart. It's the first game we launched in my company. It's been a huge success. We've been working on it now for 9 years and have 14 sets. That's an amazing thing to have done and to be able to be a part of. And so I'm always grateful for that, and it's super fun to play. But honestly, Shards of Infinity, which we just released this year back in February, has been an amazingly fun game, right? Shards of Infinity is a deck building game, very similar to Ascension, but it's kind of what I took everything I've learned from all my years doing Ascension to like make exactly the game that I want to play the most. And I play it a lot. It's actually a problem in the office. We have to tell people to stop playing Shards of Infinity because we have to work on other games. So that one's the one I want to play the most right now. So favorite overall of my work probably still has to be Ascension, but Shards of Infinity right now has got my heart. Number 7, what sparks or inspires you to start a new game design? Honestly, all kinds of things. And I have an entire chapter about inspiration in the book and how do you find inspiration and where do you start with a design? How do you come up with ideas? And I'll give just two notes out of that, right? One is you got to follow your passion and follow your curiosity. You want to find something that excites you, and it could be that you start from a game that you like and something you want to change about it, something you don't like. It could be that you start from a story or an idea that you have or a component that you want to work with, right? Something that becomes the core of what you're trying to figure out, and then you build things from there. And the next tip is what I call ABE, the ABE principle, ABE. Always be exploring. To be a great game designer, you have to have a lot of raw material to draw from because you're trying to pull different elements from all over the world. So that means you should be playing a lot of games, you should be reading about subjects you're interested in and exploring, ideally traveling and talking to other people in other industries, and just find what interests you, right? You don't have to study anything in particular, but find the things out there that interest you and really dig deep and try to learn a lot about them because the more you learn about stuff, the more you're exposed to, the more things you're going to have to be inspired by and to draw from when you're actually working on your designs. How number 8? How many unfinished games do you have on your table right now? And how many game design ideas have you had to abandon along the way? And usually, at what point in the design process do you usually decide if a game design idea should be abandoned? Whew, how many unfinished games do I have right now? I'm going to take a second and I'm going to look at my unfinished games project folder and see exactly where we're at here. The new games projects that are been abandoned right now looks like it's about 60 games. So quite a few. The truth is that I work on games and fragments of games all the time. I have tons of ideas that I'll like put at varying stages of prototyping or ideating and not necessarily bring to completion. There's not really a specific part that I usually stop. Basically, and again, I talk about this in the book also, when you're going through the core design loop, which is that process of going from inspiration, framing, brainstorming, being able to prototype, test, and iterate, at various points you're going to run through tests and your ideas aren't going to work out and you're going to kind of stall a little bit. Or maybe your ideas are working, but they're just not as exciting to you as something else that you're doing. And so what I'll do is I'll write down very carefully all the rules for my game, all the notes of whatever I've done, and then I set it aside and I put it in a folder. And then periodically I'll look back through that folder and then decide sometimes it's worth pulling something back. Sometimes the game's going to stay unfinished, but parts of it, ideas from it, end up finding their way into other games that I work on. So it's pretty regular to have quite a long set of games that don't ever get made. And I'm sure there will be many more games I work on that don't get made than those that do. So don't be discouraged if some of your games get tabled. But do work on making sure you do keep momentum on at least some of your game projects to make sure things get done. And again, I give a lot of tips about that, how to stay motivated, how to overcome obstacles, how to keep going in the book. Any advice you can give aspiring game designers in Philippines? This is question number 9. Well, hopefully some of what I've been talking about here and some of what I've written in the book resonates with you, right? No matter where you are in the world, these principles are universal. So it doesn't matter if you're in Philippines, if you're in the US, if you're in Russia, right? These same principles will work. And I understand, based on some of the earlier questions, the challenge is being far away from the heart of the game design community. But there's no reason that you can't serve the community that you're in, serve the online community, and build ways that you can add value to the world, add value to game design companies, and create your own stuff from wherever you are, right? Just you have access to the internet, you have access to this video, you can make this happen. And so, don't give up and don't let circumstances discourage you from following your dreams. right? You got to be responsible, you got to be making reasonable choices, but don't say, well, okay, I live too far from places, so I can't make games, or I don't have enough money, so I can't make games, or I didn't go to college, so I can't make games, right? None of those things are as important as being able to take the step-by-step process of in coming up with those ideas, testing them, bringing them to life, and working to put them out there and bring and add value to other people and build relationships with other people. Those steps in general, if you keep doing those things, you can be succeed and make games come to life and make your dreams come to life. Okay, last question, number 10. Please let us know of any upcoming projects you have that we should watch out for. Well, I have a lot of stuff. I mentioned there's about 60 games in my kind of dead or waiting folder. I have about 10 projects, 8 to 10 projects at any one time that are active that I'm working on. New ones that are coming out that I'm very excited about. The first Shards of Infinity expansion, Relics of the Future. It's going to be coming out in November. It's only going to be $9.99 and it adds right into the Shards of Infinity game. Adds a ton of new stuff, unique character powers, a bunch of new cards for the center deck, a bunch of rules variants for solo play, team play, bloodbath variant, lots of cool new stuff, tons of gameplay. That's really exciting. I have the new Ascension expansion called Deliverance, which is actually going to be pairing with the last set, Delirium. Still uses the inside mechanic, continues the story of the world of Delirium and the dream world that's turned to nightmare. What's going to happen and how does the world evolve from there? A lot of really cool new ways, and it uses the inside mechanic in a totally new way. So that's also very exciting. Looking forward to people reacting to that. And then I have some other crazy projects too that aren't even Stoneblade stuff. I'm working with the Wharton School of Business on a game called The Breakthrough Game, which I talk a little bit about in my book, which is about how to be creative. And it's actually a game you can play with other people to solve problems and come up with new ideas. And so, taking my skills as a game designer and partnering with the Wharton School of Business and learning about innovation and creativity and being able to apply that to the world and reach communities that are not even interested in games or tabletop gaming or anything is really exciting to me too. And I have another big property I'm working on, which is going to have a huge announcement, huge launch in a couple months. I'm actually not allowed to talk about it yet, but check back in 3 months. It's going to have a cartoon and toy property and all kinds of cool stuff. So a lot of exciting things. So definitely stay tuned. Easiest way to keep up with me, you can follow me on Twitter at Justin_Gary. You can join the Stoneblade email list. Just go to stoneblade.com and sign up for the email list. And of course, if you read the book, check it out and let me know. You can see it on Amazon. You can buy it probably right there in front of you. And so I really hope you guys enjoy it. And I hope that this helps you to make the games that you want to make and follow your passion and do the things that you really love to do. It's really an honor for me to be able to get to do this. It's an honor for me to get to be able to speak with you. I wish I could be there with you in person. I'm dying to visit the Philippines. So hopefully we can connect and come up with a way for me to get out there soon too. So thank you all very much, and I hope you enjoyed.